To configure the high availability on my DHCP server, I'm on RTS-DC1. I'm going to pull up my DHCP console here. And what I'm going to do is right-click the IPv4, and there is an option to configure failover. When I select that, now I only have one scope here, but this select all would let you select individual scopes. If you had multiple scopes, you could pick just the ones you wanted, but I only have the one scope, so we have to choose that one. The partner server. I'm going to click add server. I'm on RTS-DC1. My other server is the RTS-serve one. So I'm going to just choose that RTS serve one and OK. That's the IP address of RTS serve one. Ends with 251. So I'll just choose next for that. Now it says, what do you want to do? Do you want to put this in load balance, or do you want this to be in hot standby? So if I put it in hot standby, all that's going to do is tell the other server to just listen to see if this primary server fails. If the primary server fails, only then would the other server release addresses. If we put it in load balance, both servers release addresses at the same time. And that's so powerful, I can have this do 50-50. Maybe you want one server to release more than the other, so maybe you do 75-25. Whatever your preference actually is for the server, but I'm just going to say 50-50. Now, each server hands out addresses. But the way it works, your scope actually replicates between the two servers. So what happens, so they don't get confused, they run an algorithm. Now, we'll never see it. We'll never know what it is. But what the algorithm actually does is look at MAC addresses on client computers that request addresses. So my RTS-DC1 says, if your MAC address is in this range to this range, I'm going to lease you addresses. Serve 1 said, if your MAC address is in this range to this range, I'm going to lease you addresses. Both servers actually replicate the scope, so they know which addresses have already been leased. If one of the servers fail, the other server now assumes responsibility for leasing all the IP addresses. Pretty awesome. And really, this is fully configured. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this box for enable message authentication. That is just like a shared secret or phrase. You have to type in both servers, but I'm just going to clear that and choose next. This is a summary of what we defined, and I'm going to click finish, and that is created. So I'll just close it. Now, if I go back to the other server, RTS serve 1, I'm going to pull up DHCP. I'll put that in full screen. But now when I click on DHCP IPv4, you'll see the scope for Office 1 shows up. That's the replicated scope. Now, there are a few ways you know it's replicated. Well, one, deconfigure failover is an option, replicate scope, replicate relationship. So just seeing those options kind of clues you in that it's actually part of this failover configuration. But if I actually click on the address pool, notice it has that same address configuration. Start in 100 to 200. We created an exclusion earlier. Addresses ending in 150 to 155. So that same scope now exists on both of my servers. Both are fully capable of leasing IP addresses. Pretty interesting. Now, I'm not configuring anything else in DHCP right now. So what I'm going to do is actually right-click and deconfigure failover. Now it says this will remove the selected scope from the associated relationship. Selected scope will also be deleted from the partner server. Well, that's what I want. So I'm going to click OK. This will remove the scope. And now I can actually delete the scope. Just to make sure if we connect this to an actual network, it does not start leasing addresses. So now RTS Serve 1 has no DHCP scope. And if I go back to the other RTS DC1, where we just configured all this, when I refresh the view, you'll notice the scope has disappeared. So when I deconfigured failover, the other machine will have the scope deleted when you deconfigure failover, regardless of the side you deconfigure it from. So now DHCP is completely undone. The scope configurations, rather, are undone and just removed.